Good evening, and welcome to the next project. This is the first video, so I'm doing something a little bit different. I did post on Facebook a couple of sketches that I did in my sketchbook on a couple of owls. And then what I did was, when I was quite happy with the sketches, I traced them. So I've got so that one's that one there. And then I sketched another one which is a full-on face, which I've put there. So I've done them, I've retraced them onto tracing paper for the simple reason I could move them about and see which sort of presented with the best composition. And it's a good idea, this, if you're wanting to add multiple items into your portrait or picture that you're doing. And as I say, I'm in barn owls. You've probably seen on my posts lately, I've got quite a few reference photographs on barn owls because we've had a couple across the road that have been nesting in an old empty barn. And it's been fantastic watching them. And I've done quite a lot of research into not just barn owls, but all sorts of owls. And they're a fascinating bird. And they're quite elegant, really, when you look at them and you watch them. So I thought that would be ideal for my next project. So like I say, I got some reference photographs that I'd taken. I did a couple of sketches in my sketchbook and then traced them out. And as I say, I've just repositioned them until I'm happy where they are on the paper. Okay. Now this one is actually 40% of the actual size of an owl. So 60% bigger than that, and that you will get an actual size of an owl. So it's a rough sketch, but I've put that one there first, and then, as I say, we've got the full-on face on that one. And what my intentions are, this one is what we're going to start with, and I'm actually going to do this one with some fine liners. So I'm not going to do it with watercolour or colour pencil or graphite. I'm going to use fine liners. And try and get as much of the image down as best I can with these different fine liners. Now they're all black ones, and they range from a 003 to an 01. Okay, you can use Unipin. The one thing I would say to you is make sure that they are waterproof and fade proof, so there are archival pigment in them. Micron are very good for that. So I've got the 003 there, as you can see, and then an 03 there, which is a broader line. So if get a scrap bit of paper, oops. Okay, so let's have a look. So the 003 is this one, which is the finest nib. Like that, so we can get some very fine. Let me zoom in on that so you can see. Whoops, there we go. Whoops, no, it's out of focus. Don't want to be out of focus, do we? Okay, so you know, some cross hatching and some single hatching there. Let's have a look. Stippling. So wherever the colour's the darkest, you just put more stipples, more dots, and then as you move out to lighter areas, you put them less frequently and spread out more, so that you get sort of a tonal range, and it starts to give you some sort of 3D shape. Same with cross hatching. If it's a more shaded area, then obviously you put the lines closer together, and then if it goes into a lighter area, you move out. So there's some of the lines that we will be using. So that is the 003. And then this one is an 03. So this should be, it's a lot. If you look, the lines are a lot thicker. Okay. Okay, so they're a lot thicker there, slightly thicker than there, and the dots are as well, they're a lot chunkier. Okay, again, You just spread them out, release the pressure a little bit, and away you come into some darker areas. And it just creates texture as well. So there's a couple of size ones there. This one is a 01. So hang on, that was a 03. So a 01 should be somewhere probably in between. You won't see that much difference between them, but I've put those three out just so that I can see which ones. So that's a 01. Micron, as I say, are good, they're waterproof, and it tells you on there. So if you look, it says, so it's archival ink, okay, which is a good thing. And then it does say on there that they are waterproof. So it says they're waterproof and fade proof fine liners, so that's great. Unipin are the same. These are Edding, so these are permanent, these are pigment inks again. These again, these are the professional Profi pen, and a lot of architects used to use these, so they're a good one to have as well. And then I have got a Unipin one here. This is a 0.5. Now the difference with this, again, it's water and fade proof like it says, but this one isn't black, this one is sepia. Now you probably won't see that on there so much, but it is it's a lighter colour, it's more of a grey colour to the black. So I may use it and I may not. So there's some of the markings that we're going to use. And you can do also on the cross hatching, you know, you've got that variation, but you can also then do multi cross hatching. So if you need a darker area, you can actually go in various directions. So it's going to look more like a rough sketch, but with pen, and that's this one here. I've got a reference on my phone, which I'm just going to use basically for the markings, which is this one here. So, you know, I've drawn him roughly the same. He's not quite the same, but I drew him freehand. So what I'm going to do is, what I'm going to do is, done. Right, let me just do that a minute. So what I'm going to do is go back to the original. Hang on, revert back to normal. Right. So let's have a look. So I'm going to duplicate him first. It's on my phone. I've duplicated him, and then I'm going to edit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my mirror image so that he's facing this way, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the filters, and I'm actually going to do him as black and white, okay? So there he is in black and white, and that gives me some tonal value, so that to create the tone we're going to use these pens, and we're going to use texture to create that. So that's going to be this one. And then we're going to move on, the next video, we're going to go and move on to this one, which will let me zoom back out. I'm going to move into this one, which is more of a face image of the actual barn owl. So again, as I say, you'll have an upload of the line drawing if you don't want to draw it yourself. They're both freehand drawn. And then you'll also get a reference photo of him. I've got another one here that I've just cut out so I can lay it next to me when I'm doing it. Now this one we're going to go and do in watercolours. Okay, so we're going to have a go at doing this one in watercolours. So this is a colour version, obviously, of him. He's quite light, he's got a lot of white feathers on there, but as we all know, white doesn't really exist, so it's going to be using there's some peachy. If you look, it's quite peachy on the top of his head there, on this disc area, as I call it, of his face. It's quite peachy, and it's got reddy browns and stuff, and some greys in there. And then obviously down here we've got some shadow under this face facial bit there, so that will be greys. And then we've got some burnt siennas and browns and orangey reds in there, and obviously some nice images of his eyes. So you will be getting the reference photograph as well, so you can zoom in, and we're going to have a go at doing that in watercolour. Okay, so that'll be the next video. So and then what I've done is I've just added a little bit to it there. I've just put on the top there, I've done this with some lines, so I've done it very lightly, so I don't know if you can see it properly, but that just gives the title Barn Owl. So what I've done is I've got all these on. I've used my light box actually for speediness, but you can transfer the images either by grid method, trace down. I don't like trace down, but a lot of my students like it, so yeah, you can use trace down. Just be careful when you're putting your hands on the paper that you don't press too much, because you will end up with graphite all over, and it's not always the cleanest thing to remove. But the light box, if you haven't got a light box, a window acts exactly the same. So that is where you would put your image down, and then you put the paper you're working on top, and the light coming through so you can see it and you can actually draw the image. Now, because these have come from my sketches, I'm quite happy I've done that. Another method is a grid method. So if you have a reference photograph, I have gone through this on the graphite side of things. So if you find that video, there is a grid method where you draw lines across and down on your actual reference photo, and then you get, so preferably use an A4 and use an A4 sheet of paper to put your image on, and put some squares on very lightly on your paper that you're working on, but extremely light. Do not, make sure you don't indent onto the paper, but put the squares in exactly the same position as what they are on the reference image, and then you can follow each square and draw in the image. I do go into it in great detail on the technique side of the grid method. I'm not sure if I've posted that one yet, but I will be doing. Now I have pressed on a little bit harder with these so you can see them, but I will be erasing them as we go along because I don't want the pencil marks to show through. So I have put a title here called Barn Owl. So as I say, this is going to be a different cut, sort of, it's a work piece of paper. So we're going to have a watercolour and we're going to have an ink drawing on this side. So it's something a little bit different, mixed media, but we'll see how we get on. I'm looking forward to it. So to start with, I'm not actually going to fasten the paper down, or what I will do is I'll fasten it down, but how I'm going to do it is I'm just going to put bits on the corner because I will be moving it around. In fact, no, I'm not going to fasten it down because I will want to move it in and out for you. So we're going to concentrate on this one first. So let me just put this paper over so it protects the paper from any grease in my hands. And then I'm just going to zoom in slightly on this one. Let me see if I can get this image back up again. Where are we? Did I put it at the bottom? No. Where is he? Where's the black and white version of him? Which I've just done somewhere. It's marvellous, isn't it? When you want something, you can't find it. There we go. Okie dokie. So let me just set this so that it doesn't go off. Because I'm using an iPhone, it's fairly easy. There's a lock system. So I'm just going to put it on never so it won't go off. But hopefully it shouldn't take us too long to get this particular image done. So let me go back. So there we go. So he's slightly different. I've made him a little bit chubbier probably than he is on the image there. But the reason why I've done it in black and white is because I just want some sort of reference for doing the tonal areas, which are the white areas. So as we can see here, we've got some nice feather markings, which are what I want to try and get in on here. So what I'm going to do first, we're going to start Now the eyes are going to be fairly blocked in. There's not a lot of texture we can do in there. They're quite smooth and glassy. I'm using my malleable rubber here to lighten the pencil markings around here so we can get started. And then as we move down, I'll lighten more of them. Okie dokie. So, for his eyes, let me have a look. Now on the sketch I did sort of where the eyes are going to be and the highlights. So first things I want to do is I want to isolate this highlight. So if we look at the shape of the eye and the highlight, so that's the highlight roughly there. Okay. And then this eye it sort of comes down to a teardrop, and then it's got a line, so I'm just going to put a dotted line down to where we see this beak area here, and then we've then got this round bit at the top, and that comes down and it comes around here. Okay. Now that centrepiece there is going to be very dark, and then we've got this bit around the outer side of the eye. Okay, and then I'm just going to draw in this one again. So again, this comes as a line comes down here, and then I'm just going to put that there, and then we've got the shape of the eye. So keep looking at your reference picture or your drawing, and try and get the eyes. I mean, you just don't want one eye overly bigger than the other eye. This has got a highlight there as well. And then we've got the really dark pupil. And that's the iris sort of area. Okay, so we've drawn them in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go... I used the sepia for this one. So it's not a sepia, it's a grey actually. It's... let's have a look, what is it? Oh, it's a dark grey. I thought I had a sepia, but it's a dark grey. There is a lighter grey as well that you can get in there. In them, you can get a light grey, a sepia, and a dark grey. Got up here, I think they're all dark grey. What I've got, yeah, they are. So now I'm going to go, and I'm just going to use my. This is the 0.1. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, leaving this highlight, I'm actually going to then go around. This is the darkest part of the pupil. So I'm going to use some small circular motions there. And then we've got this eyelid. They have big eyelids, do owls. Okay, so I'm going to block that in. Fetch it down here, and then like that. So a couple of lines where we've got some lighter areas. Okay, so what I'm going to do with the lighter areas, I'm actually going to use the, if you can see, let's move that further in. What I'm going to do is I'm using the grey, but I'm just going to dot, so it doesn't look like it's completely like that. And also I'm just going to put a few dots in the highlight, because I don't want the highlight to be over white of the paper. So, and as I say, this is really just going to be sort of a sketchy type of, and then down here we've got his beak. Okay, and then the disc is, because it's more or less symmetric, you've got hair, well, feathers should say, coming that way and that way. So if you look at the disc of an owl, let me show you on here, you get what I mean. So if you look, we've got, it's got white fur, and white feathers that come that way, and they come that way on that side. And then they sort of spread out around the eye that way. Okay, and then round the eye we've got this darker shape here. So that's what I'm trying to portray just here. Now, because we're doing it just in pencil, in a pen, it's not going to be, I'm just dotting some marks in there. We don't, we're not trying to get this perfect, because I say it's a sketch using a pen, an ink pen rather than. Okay, so there we go. That's for one eye. And then just do the same with the other eye. So just look where the highlight is. Go around the highlight, and then I'm picking up the black pen and I'm just going to solidly fill that pupil bit in, and this bit again above the eye, the eyelid, which is quite dark. And then we've got a dark ring around here. It comes out, it's a bit thicker at the bottom. And then obviously again I'm just putting marks. So you're just using these pens to do marks, really. And as I say, they don't have to be perfect, but you can see that highlight and everything looks a lot lighter than that one now, and that's because, as I say, using this grey pen, if I just sort of tap in some colour loosely, it sort of dulls that brightness, that over brightness out, but we have got two eyes there. Okay. So I'm actually using this as a bit of a reference for this, for the head bit, and then I'll use the phone for this bit. So if we look now on here, he's got this dark patch coming down, and this is where the feathers, the downy type of feathers. So these are more specific feathers. These are like downy feathers, so it's the soft feathers on his face. But if you look, we've got shadow. So all we're trying to create with the pens is some tonal values and some texture for this area here. So that's what I mean. Personally, I'm going to be using dots, I think, for this to make it a little bit easier. So that's all we're trying to create, really. We're just trying, nothing elaborate. That's going to come when we do the watercolour. So I'm just looking at the top of his head, and where this disc, it comes here, I'm just going to use, so I'm using the grey again, because this is it's sort of, I'll put some black in later, but if you look at the top of his head, he has got he's got some dark sections, or what if this was coloured, this would be the burnt sienna type colour. So I'm just looking at the shape, really, and I'm actually putting it in with some dots. So I'm just now, and then if you look around the edge of where the disc is, you can see some layers of feathers there. So if you look, they're like layered, and if you look, it goes all the way around and down here, so you can see them more down here. So that's what we're going to try and create around this disc area. Okay, so by doing dots and little marks like this is what we're going to do. So I'll just put some, so it's just line marking, really. And then I'm doing some and then here, as it gets darker on the top of his head, I'm going to put the dots closer together. Okay. So I'm just tapping the dots closer together, so where it's darker on his head. Okay. Just going to do that. And then we've got where it comes around just on the outside here. Okay. So this is quite consistent with colour, so with tone, so I'm just going to fill it in. But what I am going to do is I'm going to put some very distinct, use the black, because we have got some distinct, if you look on the barn owl, he does have some distinct feather marks. So I'm going to use probably let's have a look, which is that one. I think it's the 03, which is going to be the best, the thickest one. Yeah, so I'm going to use the thicker of the pens, and then I'm just going to look and just literally dot in randomly some of these darker, because what you'll find is he's got some darker patches, which are the markings, and then he's got white around them as well. So by putting the grey on first and then putting some distinct, slightly larger markings in black, that is, and also here on the edge. I'm leaving the top fairly light because they're small and they disappear more. So I've just got some grey and black dots mixed in there all together. So when you zoom in, you should be able to see. It would have probably been better with a lighter grey, but we've got the markings there as such. Okay, so we've got some texture. That's the important thing. And then as we come round here, he's sort of white round this edge. But then he's got, so what I'm going to do is go back to the grey. And then just round here, I'm just going to literally put marks. So if you look, they're sort of, I'm coming around and then just doing some uneven marks around the edge of this disc. Is sort of facial disc, just so that we can see it there. Okay, and down this centerpiece as well. What I'm going to do is if you look, I'm doing it because it's where the feathers are coming in. So I'm just doing some hatching marks, but they've sort of got a curve on them. Okay. And then we've got his beak here, so I'm just going to, because that'll peek through on some of put the shape of the beak in there. Okay, so we've got the beak. And then what we need to do is, right, so here is where we're going to see more of these. This is where we're going to see more of these the actual layers of these sort of feathers on here. So again, I'm just using a mark, using my grey just to mark those in, and then do a couple of other layers. So if you look, we've got more than, so you're creating that illusion of it being more. There we go. So there's several layers there. Okay. So let me zoom back out so you might see him starting to, yeah. So now what we've got to do is we've sort of got to create a little bit of the texture in here. So if you look at an owl, if you look at his eye, the socket seems to go in there, and you've got this shape that comes out, and it's this bit here, the lighter bit, that sort of sticks out. So that's going to be the lightest, and then in here we have shadows, and that's what we're going to create now, or try and create. So if we look, the shadows are going to come. So I'm using the grey, and I'm just going to use hatching, but I'm actually going to curve them slightly. So I'm not going to put them particularly close together. So that eye sort of goes up there. That's it, and then it comes around here a little bit. And then we've got some shadow in under here as well. So we just put some, this is single hatching, so it's just little marks. And then down here as well. So the shadows come down here. So you don't need to put them close together because it is a white, but it's not a bright white. There. I'll put a few. So wherever you see some of these grey marks appearing, there are some here as well. Okay. But as you can see, if you do it right, then that I've just sort of blocked that, so it looks like that's the top bit of his. There you go. Okay, and then we've got some dark bits here, and then again we've got the shadows, but this time they come in. And you've got to sort of follow the line of form just to create that. And then we've got the shadows down here. And then obviously here around his beak, there's quite a lot of shadow, so you can actually put a few more lines and put them closer together. But put very small lines, you don't want long lines. Okay, and then we've actually got some like that. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going back to the black, and I'm just going to put some dark sections in places, not everywhere, just in little places there, just to create a little bit more. And where the shadow is the darkest, I'm going to put a little bit more of the black lines there and a bit more closer together. Okay, and then where that is up there, that gets a little bit darker there, and then the beak's darker there. So by adding the black, I'm now creating a little bit more. So, you know, I can see it probably better than you can, but I can see where there's dark areas and where there's lighter areas. Okay. And then just put the odd bit of line there. So can you see now how we've got this? It's sort of giving us this illusion of the face of the owl there. So then this bit coming around is obviously white. Again, this is the white part of his fur, his feathers, and you can see there underneath, even though we can see the actual layers of the feathers, there's quite a bit of light hitting there as well. And then down here, as we're coming into these feathers here, more pronounced feathers, we're going to start making a lot more marks. We'll have a few odd marks here just to show the side of the head, but where the shadows aren't as deep, I'm just going to use the grey. So it seems like I'm just sticking to these few pens, which is fine. So let's have a look. So let me lighten off a bit more of this. And if you look at the barn owl, he's got very distinctive marks on his feathers. So I'm just going to lighten some of this off a little bit, because obviously I don't want a lot of the pencil marks showing through. So I'm just going to roll this malleable rubber along. There we go. Okie dokie. So now I'm just going to move my drawing up slightly. So here I can see we've got the white. So using the grey, all I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to put in a few marks, showing the sort of directions in which the feathers are. So again, I'm using single hatching, but by doing the feathers that way, it just shows that's the way they're going to lay on the owl. You can see how they're sort of forming and how they come out here. They've got a bit of a curve on them, so it's just curved lines. So with hatching, you can do curved or straight lines. And then on this side, we've got the same sort of thing. And only small lines, but they're coming up like that, and then round. Just so we've got a little bit of shape and form in that bit there. And then this is white as well as we come down here. So what I'm doing is I'm just putting a little bit of shadow on the edge of the bird. But again, I'm using single hatching, and that's going to come all the way sort of down here. I'm doing it quite close there, and then I'm curving it in, just so it's random. And then it's got quite a bit of shadow here. Okay, to can you see now? So let me zoom out again. So now you can see we've got the shape of the bird appearing. The white section here is, so the actual feather part actually starts about here, and the pattern, if we look, we have got sort of a pattern here. I'm just going to use the dots for this, like that. So I'm just dotting in some of these lines that I've drawn, which are the actual feather shapes, but we're going to sort of put pattern in them. And then as we come up here into this white area, again, I'm going to jump to the black, because we have got some of these little black dot marks here. So if you look, and then obviously as well, if you look on his, so if you look at the actual feathers, you can see we've got the dots, and then you've got this sort of black areas and some white areas. So that's where I'm sort of going to put them there, where these feather markings are. So in other words, that's the black bit there and then a white bit there. So I'm just going to do this on the edges of the feathers there, like that. So zoom back in again. Can you see? So I'm just, because we're only creating the illusion, we're not actually doing this as a 3D. And then some more specific black markings up here as well. As I said, fairly random. But the ones that are the dark, the black ones that's in the, you want them to sort of be slightly thicker and stand out more. Okay. And then I'm going to go back in with the grey. So to get this texture, I'm just going to use, I think the best thing to use is just the grey and use some dot marks, but very light, so that we don't take away from the black ones that we've just put in. Okay, so let's make sure they stand out that little bit more there. And then try in between the two black marks not to put too much of the, leave quite a bit of the paper, because there is a white section around them. And then just, I'm only going to lightly put this dot, sort of dotting effect. And then when we come down to where the feathers are, I'm just going to actually put that in as a bit more of a solid, not a full solid line, but like that. Okay. Keep swapping between that and the black. Make sure we get these. And these black markings that you can see, make sure they do stand out a little bit, and just put some lines in for the feather markings, you know, the edges of the feathers as we call them. So you can see that they do actually have edges on these feathers. Okay. And then if you look, and then as I say, it fades up into white here, so we do have white areas here as well. So I'm only lightly doing this with the grey. If you haven't got a grey, just use a black, but use a thin black, and make sure you use a thicker black to make your specific black feather marks on him. Okay. And then as you're coming up into the white area, I'm just going to put some more single hatching curve marks, because this is where you'll see the white feathers sort of going into the browny feathers. So we just need to mark that, and then every so often you will get these markings in there. So it's just roughly looking at your reference picture, And then here we have got some more feathers, which I'm actually going to mark in with the grey. Okay. And then, so I actually put these in with a pencil. I did draw them in because obviously I want to, because it's done to a sort of scale, I want them to actually sit there. So, and then we've got the line that's the sort of centre of the feather, and then just here we've got some little types of feathers. And then this is where the feathers change into long, thin. So I'm doing these all in, I'm doing everything in grey first, and then I'm just, or if you haven't got grey, use a thin pen. I mean, you can do this with pencil. You could just do it with graphite if you wanted. And then here, this is where they change. Now, if you look, I'm drawing the feathers from the bottom up because this is where they all sort of shoot together. Again, that's where we got some shadow. So, and then using the black, we have got some more of these black marks on his chest. So the very distinctive marks on the barn owl. Okay, and then here we've got where that comes there. I'm just going to put some black marks there. Now I'm not going right down to the bottom of the feather, but just that's the centre thing of the feather, and then just putting some black marks up. And again on here, I'm just going to put some little black marks. And I'm going over the bottom part of these. I'm not going to put too much detail in them. I just want the idea and the impression that you know that you've got the image that they are feathers, and then again re-establish those with the black, a bit darker black, and some more of these black markings here, and some on these feathers here, and then we will put some dots in. So I'm actually making these black marks quite substantially stand out. Okay, like that. Okay. So let me zoom out again now, so you can see. So you can see we're getting a. It's like an illustration of an owl, to be honest. And so now all of this area, I'm just going to go over with, like we have up here, because this is where the browner feathers, the sort of orangey brown they are. They're more like a burnt sienna. So I'm just going to put some light dots around here. I'll leave some areas where it's white because there are some white patches on the feathers, so just randomly you can leave areas of white. So you don't want to completely mask cover it with the dots. I am going to put a little bit of shadow under here because we've got, so I'm using single hatching again. And that's because these feathers obviously come down over these. And same here, we're going to have a bit of shadow here underneath the other distinct feathers that we've drawn. So I'm only putting, and then I'll just fade them off. And that just gives you you can see where the feathers are actually overlapping. So you're just putting in some lines in there. So if you look, when you get close up, if you look, I'm just putting, basically, I'm putting a bit of shadow underneath each of the rows of the actual feathers that I've drawn in. Okay. And then the rest of it, I'm just going to be doing some dots and leaving some white areas as well. Because like I said, there will be white areas on these feathers. Just that there is some grey dotted areas as well. If you look on the owl, you know, there are some darker areas. So that's what I'm trying to create, is just some areas that's like this, patchy. So the best way I could see of doing that would be using an artistic license and doing some stippling, basically. Sorry if you can hear my desk, it's a glass desk, so it does make a bit of a noise. Okay, and then we've got this white area again. So again, I'm just putting in some, this is just to illustrate that the white areas are there, and it's a different type of area to this. This is more of a blocked in, different coloured area, but because we're only working with black and white, then you know we've got to use the tools that we've got to give that impression, which I think that's what we're doing successfully there. And then I've got these feathers down here, which are this sort of tail feathers. Okay. Again, I'm just going to put some shadow under there, a bit of shadow around here. I'm just doing single hatching there, and then I'm going to use black this time. The tail feathers will be darker, and I'm just going to put some dots and mark in some of the feather marks there. Okay. I mean, where the shadows are, I'm just going to go back over with some black with the dots just into where I put the hatching lines, and then as we come out into the other area, just pull back a little bit with the pressure and the closeness of the strokes, and you will create a piece that looks like it's just shadow underneath each of the layers of the wings, the feathers on the wings. Okay, and then down here we're just going to put lots of dots again. Let me get a thicker pen. Which one is it? The 3. Obviously, the thicker the pen, the quicker you can do the dotted areas. Okay, so just dotting away there. So this is really just a quick pen ink drawing, showing you the different ways. Because what you could do with this as well, if you wanted to, once you've done all the ink work, leave it for a while just to make sure it's 100% dry. You could actually put some washes over of watercolour and give it some colour if that's what you want to do. You don't have to just leave it like this. I mean, this one, the other one I am going to do sort of, I'm going to try and do it sort of realistically with watercolour. So I'll be using small brushes and delicate strokes. But with this one, you could, if you just put a wash over it. So what I might do is, once I've got this on and dried, I'll probably leave the whiter areas, but what I will do is I'll put these burnt sienna areas where we've put the pen. If you put a wash of burnt sienna over it, you will get a feeling of the actual picture itself. So now we're coming down to his leg, where we see these lovely, really big gripping claws. So I just want to make sure I get the shape of these in. And then the claws. They have very big talons, claws, because obviously they do carry, they pick up voles and things like that. So, and then he stood on there, just put a bit of a stone wall thing there. He's got a bit of shadow here on his leg. So again, I'm just going to put some small sort of squiggly marks on there. I'm just going to put the wrinkles that they have on their things there, and then I'm just going to put in some black for his claw and just leave a little white highlight there. And then under each of those, I'm just going to add a bit more black in there. Like that. So each of the wrinkles here, I'm just going to put a bit dark underneath. And there we go. And then all I'm going to do then is I'm just going to do some, I'm actually just doing some curved strokes this way, and I'm going to do some cross hatching just to give it a bit of shadow on the top there, and then straight down there, just a few bits in between like that. So let's zoom in so you can see what I'm doing there. And then what I shall do is I'm just going to, so this is sort of curved cross hatching, and it's just really to give it a little bit of texture. Like that. Okay, it's as simple as that. So now if I zoom out, you can see that we've now got the illustration of a barn owl, which is not bad. You can see where the shadow areas are, the white sections. You can tell which are going to be the white sections. So what I shall do now, I'm just going to get a little bit of paint and a brush, and I'm not going to put a lot of washes on this because it is just a quick illustration. But what I'll do is I'm actually going to put on, I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to get some water, and then we're going to put a little bit of a wash on it just to add a little bit of colour. And what will happen is where this pen is and where the darker pen is, the colour will darken, so you'll see the shadow more. So if you just bear with me for one moment, I'll get some water and some nice colours for the owl. Right, I shall be 2 minutes. Oops. So, like I said, I'm not going to do a lot of work here, but I'm just going to put a little bit of colour on. So, in his eyes, I'm actually going to put a little bit of burnt sienna over the black, because the eyes are dark, but they have got that brown, nice warmth to them. And also I'm going to put a little bit of, I'm going to use a cerulean blue just in the highlight. So I'm using very watery paints, and I mean very. So I'm using very watery paints. The brush I'm using for this is it's the Rosemary & Co series 344, and that one's a Proline. So I've just picked a couple of brushes up. They're not massive, but they've got some really nice points on them. So the cerulean blue, I'm just going to dab in the highlight on there, and then clean the brush out. Make sure you've got some kitchen roll. Okay. I mean, these are sort of things, if you're out and about and you want to do a landscape scene, these are things that you can do when you're doing things like that as well. Just take a small palette of paints out with you. Do some quick sketches with either graphite, and then go over with some with some pen like this, and then just put a bit of colour in so that when you come back you can actually turn it into a more substantial painting if you want to. So it's a quick way of doing a sketch, but it's effective, and you know, by putting a little bit of colour in there you're going to create a little bit of something as well. So I'm going to put what have I got here, some burnt, no, that's a bit dark. So there, so yeah, so this is the burnt sienna. Okay, so I might just add a little bit of light red with it. Yeah, that's better. So again, I've put some light red with a bit of burnt sienna, so it's very pale. So it's quite watery. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dot that on the eye, around the iris, just to give it a little bit of, in the lighter sections where I just dotted, where I didn't put the black. I mean, you go over the black with it as well, so it'll darken wherever the black is, but it'll just leave that little bit of warmth there. And also on his beak, and a little bit round where he's, so if you want you can put some water there, but I can't see the point. Just pull it, put a bit of colour there and then just pull it out slightly, just to soften it in, because he has got some sort of warmth around his eyes. So just putting a little bit of that colour there, and then what I'll do is I'll clean the brush, clean it, dry it off, make sure there's no water on the ferrule, and then just soften. Now this is going to dry fairly light, you will hardly see it, but it's just going to add that little bit of a wash. As I say, it's not an actual painting, it's just a wash. So let me zoom in and you'll be able to see it better. Can you see? It's just a slight wash of colour there. Let's just wet this a little bit further and put a little bit stronger colour in, just so then what'll happen is it should make the white areas stand out more. Okay, so I'm just going to make this a little bit. So I'm going over the pen, just dabbing it on where the shadow areas are mostly. Now we know that we want that to stand out because that's the white of his eye. And then we've got some of this brown warmth there. So just that little bit, no more, that's plenty. And then just mix up a little bit more of that. I'm adding a little bit of rose madder to that as well, just to give it a bit more of a reddy touch. Because there are parts in this owl where you've got the red touch. So up here at the top, where we did all these dots, I'm actually going to dot this because we do want some white still showing through. So again, it's a very light wash. And I'm just dotting it across here on the top of the head. Okay. And then just clean the brush off and then just soften it away down the side here into these whiter areas. Okay, so, and you can see the pen actually does help create some texture on there as well. So let's zoom back out again a little bit more. Whoops. So we're coming up now, so let's have a look here, and as I say, we have got some colour. I'll put that just there. We have got some colour here as well to put in, which is this browny colour again. I'll just add a little bit more of the burnt sienna to that. Again, quite watery. And then I'm just going to put that, just go along where the black lines are, and just every now and then leaving some of the white paper as well, but just to create that bit there. And then always soften it off because we don't want any hard edges or anything to show through. So just soften that off there like that. Okay, so we've got these are white areas again, so I'm just going to leave that for now. And then down here we've got this colour again. Now looking at it, we're going to have, I'm going to put a little bit more burnt sienna in there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to wet this area. Okay, So I'm just going to come down with the brush. I'm just giving it a wet. I don't want to soak it, I'm just giving it a nice wet. So if you just look at the side of it, you can see whether it's got a nice... There we go. And go further with the water, go further than where you want the colour to go, because you want the colour to just nicely blend away. You don't want it to have an hard edge. So again, I'm just getting that colour. I'm just going to put a little bit of red in there, yeah. And then again, like I said, we've got a very watery colour. We're not going over excessive with the colour. I'm just going to add a bit of the French ultramarine in to give it a sort of a grey effect as well. So by mixing that, you've got a sort of grey purple effect there, which when you look at it, he's got quite a bit of that around as well. So if you put that on where the darker areas are, that will show up there. Okay, fetch that down. So his tail feathers are a lot darker. So again, burnt sienna and just French ultramarine probably, just to give it that darker brown, but I don't want to go too dark, because I say we just want to give it a wash, we're not painting anything specific on here. Okay. So the light red now, just pop that in. So some areas are quite light, and then I've darkened some areas up as well. And I've also left a few bits of the white areas as well if I can. Just so we've got... Okay. And then just soften the areas away like that. Now, I'm going to pick up a little bit of the raw sienna, because... on his chest, on these chests where it's white, I'm also just going to put a few bits of the raw sienna just to give a little bit of colour into the whiter areas and around the outer side of his disc on his face. But I'm going to leave that, the nose section coming down towards his beak, I'm leaving that more or less clear just so that that sticks out a lot more. Okay. That's it, basically. So just a few very light washes, very washy, and I've actually just done it with the one brush, one size brush, which I can't see what size it is actually. It's size 4, so that's a 4, but it's got a nice point on it, so that's what makes it work. So let me zoom out again now. Make sure I've just softened all those areas in, what I've just put. So if you look, there's white patches, and then I've just dropped a few bits of raw sienna in, not many. Clean the brush off, zoom out, and there you can see. So the last thing we've got to do is his feet. So with his feet, I'm actually going to use that darker colour again, which was a bit of the French ultramarine and burnt sienna, so it gets a browny grey, and I'm just going to fill some of his feet in there. Whoops, I've gone over that bit much there. Okay, and then again, I'm just going to put some raw sienna and just put some bits over where the rock or whatever it is that he stood on, just over where the hatchings are. Okay, and there we go. It's as simple as that. So it wasn't too long a job for that. Obviously the other one is going to be a little bit more challenging, but I think for the first one, so can you see by just putting a nice layer of washes, of thin washes over where you've put black pen, you get, it helps to create the shadows. And you know, you can put one flat colour on there, but because of the different tones and the amount of lengths and the different strokes we've done with the pen, it does give the owl a different effect. And if you look, this does look like it's coming forward, and then is his chest there. So let me zoom in a little bit onto his face. Sorry about the camera moving. And if you look carefully, you can just see a little bit of the blue in his highlight, and then some of the burnt sienna and that there, and then we've got the shadows under here, and this is left white. So it does give you, so you do have that, you don't have it doesn't look flat, it looks quite nice. Okay, so that's using a pen and a wash over the top. Okay, so what I'm going to do now before I finish this is, oh no, I think that's it. So we'll finish for that now. What I'm going to do though is I'm just going to give you a couple of facts about the barn owl, which are quite shocking today. I mean, the facts that I'm going to give you are what's supposed to happen in the wild, but because of today's society, unfortunately, the barn owl is a protected species, and there are reasons for that, and that's because of the interference of man. I mean, the statistics are they are threatened locally, well, everywhere to be honest, and they are protected. So if you do see owls nesting, please ensure that, you know, the wildlife police are informed, because obviously they can protect them. Don't ever post it on Facebook or on any social media and post where you've seen it, because people will go and pinch the eggs, disturb the nests, capture the birds, you know, which it's not nice. They are a wild animal, and you know, they should be allowed to live in their own natural environment. The eggs are a white to an off-white, elliptical. They're about 43 millimetres by 33 millimetres, the eggs. The incubation period for the eggs is about 32 to 34 days. So the owl will be sat on them, you know, for that length of time. And then the fledging, they don't fledge until about 52 to 60 days. So, you know, it's quite a long period of time. We've been watching them here in the old barn. And, you know, we've seen both pairs of owls. And as the birds are getting more and more hungry, you're getting both parents going out and hunting more often. We have seen them in daylight, because obviously the young ones have got to be fed. Now, the lifespan, they can have, the clutch size can be between 3 and 11, but the lifespan in the wildlife is supposed to be up to 17 years. But unfortunately, today, they're not lasting that long. And that is, as I said, because of man's intervention, and because also their environments are threatened, so they haven't got that many places now to nest. The mass of the male is on average 16 ounce, the female slightly more, 17 ounce. It's a medium-sized earless owl, but it's got sharp hearing, believe me, and its head can turn, you know, quite a long way. It's a slender owl. It's not quite a chubby owl as you think. They are quite slender. And it's what you call part of the monkey-faced owl family. Its wings are quite long, so when you see an owl, it's unmistakable when you see it flying. Its wings are very long and pointed and extend beyond the tail when folded. The legs are heart-shaped. It's got a pale face, like we said, like a disc. It's got very dark umber eyes and a straw-coloured bill. The barn owl is quite pale, relative, you know, in relative to most owls. The owls that you see, they're a lot darker, and it does look very ghostly when it's flying, like a white silhouette. And its cries are quite eerie as well. But it's a beautiful creature. The habitat is deserted buildings, which, you know, a lot of people wonder about that, but it is. It's they will nest in almost any type of owl, but in particular in the recess of human-made structures. That's why they're called a barn owl. So they live in towers, attics, barns, haystack, deep wells, anywhere where they can protect their young, but you know, the young can fledge quite easily. Their habitat, it's sort of, they're sort of like 250 metres above sea level. They prefer arid areas to humid ones. They're not very good when it's raining. They don't like to come out when it's raining. They're often associated with fields and grassland and at the edge of woods. As I say, they do nest in human-built structures as well. The females are slightly darker than the males. They're more boldly marked and are slightly larger, about 11% larger. The prey, what they use is 95% of it consists of rodents, and especially the favourite is voles, and then that's followed by mice and shrews. But again, that's another thing that's killing the owls, is if the voles and the mice are eating off and the fields and there's pesticides there, then they're very sensitive, these birds, and it can kill them. They will occasionally go for reptiles and bats and things like that. And that's really it. That's all I can really say about them. As I say, this one is about, I'd say it's probably half size or 40% size of a real one. But, they're not quite as big as what you think, but they're beautiful birds. The length of them is about 14 to 20 inches that they can be. So, they're quite a nice bird. They're beautiful to watch. And as I say, the cries are very eerie. So I hope I've given you a little bit of knowledge on them. And as I say, the habitats are dying off at the minute. So we do need to protect them as much as we can. So I hope you enjoyed doing that one. And then, as I say, we're going to move on next in the next video. I'm going to post the next video tomorrow. And we're going to probably do this one, which is going to be slightly bigger. It's just the head. But we're going to do this one in watercolour and do a more realistic painting. We're not going to use the pen. We're just going to go straight in with the watercolour. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed that. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow when we come on to do the next bit. Thank you for watching. Bye.